This meeting is being recorded.
Great, excellent. English 1, it is Friday, January 27th, Professor Determined Dean Ramser, and I'm going to go over the course. Let me screen share where we're at so far. Great, okay, so I'm on the home page. And I'm going over it again because we had a couple of students who joined us late. So I want to make sure that we're in sync on where we're at. There's two texts we're working with now. The Lowell Norton Reader, 50 essays from the first 50 years. That book is only in print. So if you need essays from that, because you don't have the book yet, you can probably Google them, and I'll show you how to do that and find a PDF copy online. Most of those essays are pretty standard, but that edition is only in print. Another text that we use, but not yet, is 1984, the novel by George Orwell. You can probably find that at a used bookstore. You can certainly find it online through any of the search engines like Amazon or Thrift Books. You can probably pick that up for a few dollars, or a brand new edition if you want to. And then the other one is a writer's reference, the 10th edition. That one you can rent online. I think you can rent it through Amazon. You can rent it through VitalSource and maybe through another website as well. You can also purchase it. It is the latest edition, so it's going to have some of the changes to formatting. And English courses are typically obsessed with how it looks on the page. For example, this layout of this canvas shell has a certain look to it. There's a certain amount of white space around the letters, certain amount of where the margins are. So the design of the page is very important, and that's what makes Canvas so successful. For MLA format, Modern Language Association format, it's the same way, as well as with APA. APA is used more for psychology, sociology courses. MLA is specific for English, although you can probably use it for your other courses as well. Chicago is more for a history course. That said, as a first year or second year student, your instructor probably will accept MLA for everything, even if you're in a history course or even if you're in a psych course. The citation is a little different. APA is about the year of publication. And MLA wants to know the page number. That's a little different. Chicago is more like APA. Anyway, so in the writer's reference, the 10th edition has the updated versions of all three of those standard formats. So it's useful to have. I understand if you can't purchase it, but if you're going to be in college for a few more years, I recommend that you have a writer's reference that is updated like this one, and keep it as a tool. It's really going to help you not only with how to do in-text citations, how to format your essays, how to format your research paper, how to organize a ethnographic journal, tools that you need as a student. So pretty helpful. That's my daughter and I graduated with my doctorate at age 60, and there we are celebrating. Yay, woo-hoo. Little personal stuff. So let's go to announcements. And I tried to put what is needed on announcements and nothing more. I did put a few things about week 1, only because it was new. Also important dates. Can go over this. So what's coming up? January 30th is the last day to drop the course, and that's going to be next Monday. So if you want to drop the course without a W on your transcript, that's when you need to do it. That said, I have dropped courses. I started college in 2001 and I ended in 2018. So in those 17 years, with a year off or so for some other training for being a teacher, I probably dropped, I think, 3 courses. So it's not the end of the world. At least for me, it wasn't. But if you want to drop the course and don't have it and not have a W on your transcript, you need to do it by the 30th. If you want to drop the course and get a full refund, the 30th is the day to do that. So if this is not your course, I understand, that's when to do it. And it's also the last day to add, of course, with a counselor approval. Let's see, what else is on the calendar? We got some holidays that really won't affect us. We have spring break. I'll still be around, so you can certainly email me anytime and ask me a question. The campus is going to be closed probably that week. So for those that are near Susanville or near the Lassen campus, be aware of that. The summer registration starts in April. And then for this course, the finals week is the 23rd through the 26th. So for this course, since it's online and the way it's set up, I'm just going to open up the assignment, which is a timed in-class essay, probably on a Tuesday, for example, and end it on a Thursday. So within those 2 days, log on, look at the prompt and write your essay. Try to be honest about your time and do it at one sitting if you can. I think you have to do it at one sitting. I don't think you can log back in and add to it. Anyway, so that's sort of the final. And I do that because I found that I had to do a similar kind of timed writing assignment for my undergraduate as well as for my master's. And you may encounter that as well. So I want you to be familiar with that process of having a prompt, having 2-3 hours in a room where you need to open up your computer and write, or a piece of paper. And the last day of the semester is going to be May 26th. I also included it as a PDF file. Now, that said, I noticed in a training session I had recently that sometimes students have a hard time opening a PDF. So it's recommended that I include as much as I can in a page format. Page is a little different layout. It's designed for Canvas. It's designed for online learning management systems. So this looks similar to the announcement. That's because I created it in a page. Page is the instead of PDF or Word or Google, it's the document software designed for online management systems like Canvas. So that's one of the pages. And I mentioned this only if for some reason students have a hard time opening a PDF or a hard time seeing the assignments. The assignments overview is also in a page format. So essentially I copied and pasted it into this template and then uploaded this page onto the Canvas shell. I also included a PDF copy for those that could download PDF and open it. It does require sometimes Acrobat Reader, and not every student has access to that software. However, I'm told that most students have access to, through Microsoft, a Microsoft 365 version that has PowerPoint, Word, ability to read PDFs, Excel software as well to help you as a student. So you may want to check that out on your own. But anyway, this is in page format. Essentially, every week there's a series of Q&A assignments about what you read. I found that students learn more from each other. So I want you to post questions about the essays you read from a reader. I want you to post questions about the chapter from a writer's reference, and then answer those questions online. There's a rhetorical precis, which is a 4-sentence summary of what you read from Lowell Norton Reader. The rhetorical precis I found to be really helpful in helping students include the information that is critical to sharing their analysis of what they read. So the first sentence of a rhetorical precis includes things like the name, some sort of title about them, the date of publication, and the title. And without the rhetorical precis, I found that some students were starting their essays by saying, the essay was really good. I really liked it, and it really talked about a really good stuff, you know? I remember back when I was in summer camp, and I don't know what essay they read. I don't know when it was published. I don't know who wrote it. So the rhetorical precis I found a helpful tool to help student writers synthesize in a very short paragraph what they read. You could also use that for your in-text citations requirements in essays 3 through 6. So it's a useful tool for learning how to write, and you can also use it in your own essays. So that's essentially that. And then we have essays we're working on. So you finish your personal narrative essay, which is telling a story. Most of you did pretty well with that. And a story, traditionally has sort of a build of, it reaches some sort of big conflict and there's some sort of resolution. And surprisingly, most of you did that structure, and that's sort of a traditional narrative format. I wasn't looking for that. I just wanted you to write and tell me something about yourself. The second essay is similar to the first one in that you're telling a story, but the second essay is telling a story about someone else by using third person. Third person is that pronoun reference that talks about them or they or she or he or her or him. And I found it helpful in letting students learn how to navigate the possessive pronoun. That pronoun represents the person, and that person has ownership of something like an action or a thing, like a noun. So it has possession of either a verb or a noun. And that's helpful when you get in essays 3 through 6, where you're referencing an essay that does something. So, and we'll get into those essays here in a minute. Essays 3 is a critical analysis of one of the readings from the Little Norton Reader. And this is where the rhetorical priestess can help you, because it's designed to help you read something and summarize in an intelligent way the main points of that essay. What was the main argument? What's the rhetorical context of that essay? And the rhetorical context is the 5 W's and the how. When did it take place? That matters, right? 2023 is a totally different time period for a lot of things than 2016, right? 2016 was the presidential election campaign. A new president was sworn in. It was radically different. So 2023 is very different than 2016, which is very different than, let's say 1965, right? With Beatles, with war in Vietnam. Anyway, so the when matters, the where matters. Is it a conflict in Ukraine that we're focused on? So a person living in Ukraine has a different life experience than someone living in, Northern California. So the where matters. The who matters. A college student, for example, is different than a grandparent. A child who's 4 or 5 has a different perspective than someone who's working, 40, 60 hours a week as the main provider for their family. So the who matters, the what matters, right? What exactly did happen? Sometimes we'll have the same experience and have totally different analysis of it. My wife made a right-hand turn on a corner. Someone was making either a left-hand turn, I think, or going straight through the intersection. They bumped fenders, right? So my wife, our car on the left front fender, and the other driver on their right front fender, and the cars touched, they scratched, they pull over to the side. That driver had a much different experience of what happened than my wife. My wife thought, anyway, and so the what does matter, because our perspective, our analysis of the what changes, depends on who we are and where we're at and what time it is. And then also the why. Why did it happen? And usually the essay is exploring the why of what happened. So the introductory paragraph, and that's why I referenced the outline to look at, and I'll look at that here in a second. Yeah, so the outline is sort of a template of what the essay should have structurally. And there's also proposal questions, which is designed to help you think about what you want to write about. So we're going to look at the proposal, and we'll look at the outline as well. That structure of the proposal and the outline is used for essays 4. Again, looking at essays from Little Norton Reader. 5, which is now looking at essays in addition to 1984 by Orwell. And 6 is the research-based essay, which is also looking at the essays from Little Norton Reader, which you've done all the rhetorical pieces on, as well as 1984. So let's take a look at let's take a look at the proposal, and I should have it in pages. Okay, here's the proposal. So the proposal is nothing more than writing about 100 words, 50 words, something like that, about what it is that you want to write about. I found this structure, these questions helpful in letting students look at what it is that they want to write about. And these questions as well. So we have this sort of rhetorical analysis, which is who's the audience? Who do you want to read it? If you're writing to an 8th grader, that's going to be different than if you're writing to someone who's in their 20s or 30s. So think about who your audience is. Who do you want to read your essay? What's your purpose? Why do you want to share your analysis of that essay that you're doing your analysis of? Again, the context does matter. For example, I remember being in a class, and we're discussing race relations, and this is when something had just happened. I want to say when George Floyd was attacked and killed, and I was trying to. That was the context of it, and we're talking about public education, and I had a very limited understanding, as I learned later on, of what public education meant for someone else. So some of my classmates didn't like the way I was starting my opinion. Another classmate told the other classmates to be quiet and let me finish so we could learn from each other based on our own perspective. I since then learned so much more about what public education really is for students, not just what it's supposed to be. I was only looking at what it was supposed to be. So my point in that little analogy is the rhetorical context, right? This stuff here really matters a lot. We learn so much more about something through our experience, and we look at something differently from someone. For example, someone who's been to war has a different experience, different understanding of what conflict is. Someone who was homeschooled has a different experience of what schooling is. Someone who only went to private school has a different experience of what schooling is. Someone who only went to public school, like I did, has a much different experience. So the context is very important of what you're writing about. So this is how you're sort of part of that essay. Stance also matters. We all have our own specific attitude and bias about a topic, and that's okay, as long as we acknowledge it and we make sure we make note of it when we're writing. If we feel a certain way about a topic or about an analysis, about a perspective, make sure that you include that in your rhetorical analysis of that essay, because it's going to let your reader know that you're aware of the context of what you're writing, you're aware of your own perspective on it, and it broadens the conversation, makes it a deeper, more meaningful conversation. You may have heard people say, well, okay, let me be clear. I have a bias on this topic, or, I have a different attitude about it than a lot of people, because the media, what I call media, is the format of the assignment. So a blog has a different rhetorical analysis than a tweet, because of the character limit on a tweet. A blog can be limitless. It tends to be a little more first person and tends to sort of have a stream of consciousness style to it, which sort of rambles on, kind of like what I'm doing now. An essay is different than a book. A book has several pages, typically 200 to 300 pages. So the structure of that writing is different than an essay, which is 1,000 words, 2,000 words, which is different than, let's say, a dissertation, which is 200 to 300 words in length. And a dissertation is going to have what's called chapters, sections, and that are designed for specific purposes. So you got sub-purposes in a dissertation called chapters, and then you have the main thesis, what you're trying to argue in your analysis. So an essay of 1,000 words is a different kind of media format than a tweet. So be aware of what kind of media you're working with. and also the media of what you read. So if an essay that you came across is perhaps an interview, that's going to have a different structure to it than, let's say, an essay written by someone who's reflecting on their experience being of a certain ethnicity, for example. Design, what I call design, is the structure of the essay. This is how the opening paragraph starts. Is pathos being used? Pathos being emotion. Logos is logic. Ethos is ethics. So, for example, if I'm going to open my essay with a description of a dog being kicked, right, that would be pathos, right? Because our emotions are now stirred, they're agitated. If I'm going to start by talking, by referencing a statistic that, for example, I was working as a teacher aide for special needs students, and the teacher informed me that they learned that the percentage of students who require additional services had increased in 10 years from 1 out of 30 to something like 1 out of 10. So yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it almost tripled within a decade period, right? So that kind of fact is different than kicking a dog or embracing someone or losing someone that you love, right? So you got pathos, logos is logic, tends to be more facts. And then ethos is the ethics, the moral of the situation, right? Is it correct to cheat? Is it ethical to cheat? And cheat could be simply not telling the truth, or it could be intentionally lying. It could be misrepresenting, like that congressman from New York, George Santos, who keeps lying and lying and lying, almost like a comedian, right? So you got ethos, pathos, and logos. So when you look at your essay writing, think about what kind of rhetorical strategies of logos, ethos, or pathos will you be using, and why, and how will you be using them. And the proposal questions themselves, these are the 5 that I came up with. I think they're pretty helpful. At least it'll help you sort of think about what it is that you want to write about. Not just I'm going to write about, Zora Neale Hurston's essay. But question 1 is, whom do you want to write about? And why did you choose the topic? Maybe you have a personal relationship to what Zora Neale Hurston is writing about. Maybe it touched you in a way because it reminded you of something that happened. For example, in 5th grade, I remember bringing a classmate home, Alan Williams, and our neighbors, this is Atlanta, Georgia, 1968, and our neighbors called my mom and asked her, did she know that there is a black boy in the backyard? They didn't say black boy. And it wasn't just one neighbor. There's several neighbors that called my mom, asked, did she know? And then my mom informed me that we had to go shopping and my friend had to go home. I learned later on what had actually happened. And so that experience has made me hypersensitive to race relation issues. So Zora Neale Hurston's essay, among others, has a certain trigger response for me. So when you look at why did you choose a topic, try to be honest about it. What in the essay touched you, and why did it touch you? Because that's going to influence how you write and what you write. Question 2, what do you already know about the topic? So maybe you know nothing about this topic. Maybe you've never experienced any situation like what is being described in the essay that you want to analyze, or like in essays 4, 5, and 6, the essays and the novel 1984. What do you need to find out? Kind of like the KWL chart. What do you know? What do you want to learn? What you did learn from grade school? So what do you need to find out about this topic? For example, if the essay you're writing about is dealing with, for example, Dylan Thomas. He lived in a different time period. He's Irish. Does that matter? Does being Irish matter? Does it influence the kind of writing he did? I think it does, from what little I know about Irish literature and what Irish literature I have read. I have sort of this, my first impression is I think of a writer named McCourt who wrote a book called Angela's Ashes, which described his alcoholic father, the extreme poverty. It was very wet. They migrated to New York. New York wasn't much better. It wasn't as wet, but there's extreme poverty. The alcoholism followed. The crime and the emotional conflict followed from Ireland to New York. So my impression of Ireland is through Frank McCourt's Angela's Ashes. So I certainly need to find out more about Ireland if I'm going to write about it. I'll write about an essay that's from an Irish writer. Next, what do you want the reader to learn about your essay? Maybe there's a certain point that you think that we need to look at closer, or once again, or in a different way, right? So think about what is it you want the reader to get out of reading your essay. 4, what obstacles and challenges might you face? And they could be as straightforward as, I don't like to write. Okay, so if you don't like to write and you don't like to read, but you're in a class that's required, what are you going to do? Okay, I'll go see a tutor. For example, I was in a math course, algebra. I hated it. Oh, but I knew I had to take it. And I kept failing it. So I finally decided, okay, I'll go to a tutor. And I went to the tutor 2, 3, 4 times a week to go over the same algebraic formula, logarithm, all the stuff dealing with algebra again and again. Why? Because I had to pass the course. So that's the way I dealt with the challenge of taking algebra. And how will you overcome them? So if you don't like reading, you don't like writing, what are you going to do to overcome those challenges? Maybe it's time management. Maybe that's a challenge for you because of your work schedule, your personal life. Maybe, or you get distracted. So you need to be in a quiet space. What do you do? If it's noisy where you are, maybe put on headphones so you can block out external sounds. Or maybe you write. I know many writers that wake up early in the morning because they have a family. So they'll write from 3 a.m. until 5 a.m. before their family wakes up, for example. And question 5 is when and where are you going to write the essay, which kind of looks at what I said just now. For example, Stephen King, the very famous writer, wrote Carrie, which became a cult classic and was made into a film. He wrote that primarily on the washer, which is in the sort of pantry area of the home, not in the living room, not in the bedroom, not in an office. He was a full-time school teacher. He wrote it on top of the wash machine out there away from his wife. He could write it there. That was a space for him. That was his office. So he wrote Carrie on top of that washer in that washroom, in that pantry area of the home that he lived in. So that's how he dealt with the challenge of writing. So you got to think about when and where you're going to write it. It's really important if you haven't taken a time management course yet, to sort of map out your week and the times you're going to be used for reading and the times you're going to use for writing. That was one of my 1-unit courses I took at Berkeley when I first got there, was how to be a student. It helped me so much. I blocked out time from 6 a.m. until midnight, half hour, 15 minutes. So I would read on the bus. I'd read on the BART, the subway, the mass transit system. I could write in the library. I could write when I was at my desk job in the library. So I found being able to block out time for reading and writing and also analysis was really helpful. If I was dealing with a subject that was more difficult than others, for example, I took a Shakespeare course and I had to get over the language. So I knew I had to spend more time. So I had to block out more time in reading Shakespeare because I had to spend more time trying to understand what he was writing and how he's writing, especially the sonnets, because I don't understand the whole structure of a poem the way that he understood it. So that's the proposal. And the outline was the other thing I was going to talk about. And the outline, this is the template for the outline. So again, I made this into a page. This also is a PDF form, I think, on modules over here. So in the outline template, I found this to be helpful. That we have the opening paragraph has a hook to it, and the hook could be the first sentence, usually the first sentence, and it says something. There's something stated that is interesting, that is disturbing, that is provocative, that is catches your eye. I'll give you an example. Where did I put it? I'll find the example. It's a pretty good example of how to do in-text citation. I think I included it as a file in modules. But the opening sentence reads something to the effect that two people were going for a drive in the country, and the passenger didn't know this was going to be his last ride. Right? That's the hook. Right now I'm hooked. I'm curious. His last ride, what's going to happen? And that essay I'm referencing is about texting while driving. And the main argument in that essay was not to text while driving, and the law should be enforced that restrict and punish people who do text while driving. But the hook in that essay was that the passenger was going to experience this excursion in the country for the last time. This would be his last ride. That was the hook. So think about a hook and how to sort of bring the topic into the conversation. Next is the context. Think about that rhetorical analysis, right? The 5 W's of the how. Then that sets up the thesis statement. It's kind of like in volleyball where the ball gets passed back and forth, someone spikes it, and then someone slams it. So this opening paragraph up until the thesis is kind of like all that movement until the spike. And then the thesis is what sort of is the main argument. A thesis is the main argument of what you're going to emphasize in your essay. It has 3 parts to it. I referenced this in the last video, and I think I included what's called testing a thesis statement. So a thesis is ideally 1 sentence. Ideally, it has 3 parts to it. Ideally, it uses punctuation to transition from part 1 to part 2 to part 3. Ideally, it starts with a subordinate like although. Although is one of those signal words that we all recognize. When someone tells us something and they start by saying although, right, we know it's bad news, right? Something's going to happen. We're alerted. So although in part 1 is the problem. Part 2 is the reaction by credible sources to that problem. And part 3 is the main argument you're going to make in the essay. So a rough draft thesis is rough because you don't know exactly what you're going to write about and how you're going to write it because you haven't written the essay yet. So it's rough. So you're going to revise it later on. Kind of like anyone who's designed something or made something, you get into the project and you find that you need to adjust something, right? It's not exactly perfect. Or all kinds of, I'm thinking of carpentry now, but anyway, so it's a rough thesis. So I like this outline because it emphasizes at least 4 supporting paragraphs. So you have your introductory paragraph, you've got 4 body paragraphs, and then you have a concluding paragraph at the end, which means it's at least 6 paragraphs long, which breaks up the 5 paragraph template that you're taught in high school. In college, you do not use a 5 paragraph as a model. No one writes a 5 paragraph essay. So this is designed to sort of break out from that mold. So the 4 paragraphs that support the main argument, your thesis statement, think about like a table. It's got 4 legs to it, and the thesis is going to be supported evenly by each paragraph. So paragraph 1 should be about the same length as paragraph 4. That way there's a balance to it. And typically each paragraph has a structure of a introductory sentence, that is going to introduce that subtopic. It has cited examples and evidence and in-text citations that support that subtopic. And then you have a transition sentence that bridges to the next paragraph. So if paragraph 1 is about vanilla ice cream, the transition sentence could be something like, even though vanilla ice cream is my favorite, I have a lot of respect for chocolate chip ice cream. Next paragraph is going to be about chocolate chip ice cream. Same thing with paragraph 2. If it's about chocolate chip ice cream and you're transitioning to the third paragraph. So while many people like chocolate chip ice cream, I know friends of mine that love strawberry ice cream. Paragraph 3, right? The next paragraph is going to be about strawberry ice cream. So a paragraph has an introductory sentence. It has sentences that support that subtopic, examples, citations, analysis, and then a transition sentence. So this outline template is really helpful to look at the structure of what you wrote. And that way, when you come back and look at your essay later on, and you write what I call a reverse outline, you can look at the essay you wrote and see, okay, what did I write in the first paragraph? What did I write in paragraph 2? What did I write in paragraph 3? So you do a reverse outline based on what you wrote, further analysis of the structure. And some of my students will notice things like time, chronological order, emphasis. You may also find that paragraph 5 should be paragraph 2. You may find that paragraph 4 needs to be eliminated because it's off topic. So the reverse outline helps with that. But it's all dealing with this template structure right here. I also included it as a document here. I'm going to open it up and see if it shows on the screen. Excellent. So this is what it looks like in Word. And I strongly encourage you to work with this format. I found it to be really helpful. So let's go back to pages. Here's the rhetorical precis, which we've talked about before. It's a 4-sentence structure. And what I like in this example here, in the opening paragraph, right, the very first part, per article, that's a possessive pronoun. So you learn that possessive pronoun in essay 2, hopefully. Article is the media of this thing. This is the title, because it has quotation marks around it. You know it's a printed, published story or essay or article. This is the date of when it was published. This is the MLA format stuff. You have the author. Important to include the first name and last name. Then you have something about the author that gives them credibility, why they're an expert on this topic. Is because of there is a staff writer, which means they're full-time, not part-time, and the New Yorker is an established publication. This is the active verb, asserts, which is to be used instead of says or states or writes. Claims, I think, made a list of active verbs, and I posted it on Canvas as well. You could certainly Google that and find active verbs. And here's this is part of the rhetorical precis template. Here we have part of the who that I talked about in the context. So we have, this is part of the what. This is part of the who. This is part of the when. This is more of the who and the where, Americans, and also part of the who. So we have to think about the 5 W's and the how. We have a lot of information here in the first sentence, and we're not done with the first sentence yet. We're only halfway into it. And here's part of the analysis of the essay, why, who cares if Johnny can't read? And this is interesting, right? Asserts that Americans are reading more than ever despite claims to the contrary. So there's some sort of conflict here that we need to look at. And it's time to recover or reconsider why we value reading so much, especially certain kinds of quote unquote high cultural reading. So we have lots of information here in the first sentence. So this rhetorical priestess template is really helpful and helping student writers learn how to write in a very brief summary paragraph style what it is that you read, and you can use these rhetorical priestesses you've done as part of your in-text citation. And then here's the thesis statement. And these are questions to ask when you're writing your rough draft thesis, right? Does it propose a question or a solution or take a position? Does it have an essay's worth of development? Right? If it's not complex enough, are you going to run out of points in your essay? Is it too obvious? Right? We shouldn't shoot our parents. Murder is bad. Or I don't know, I'm thinking of something that's really obvious, right? Don't eat rocks. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. Don't play in the rain. Anyway, so if you can't come up with interpretations that challenge your own thesis, then consider revising it. Can you support it with evidence available? If you're going to make an argument about something that we don't know enough about, for example, is there water on Mars? There's limited knowledge of water on Mars. There's some knowledge, but it's very limited, partly because of the time distance from when they can gather particles and samples there on Mars and analyze them back here on Earth. So there's all kinds of challenges to that kind of thesis. So make sure that you have enough evidence available. And the biggest one, if a reader is going to say or ask the question, why is it important, you got to be able to respond. So these are questions on testing a thesis statement, which is why it's called a rough draft thesis. And then I think the next one here, and I put this in a PDF, in a PowerPoint. I don't know how to put PowerPoint into pages. So this is the PowerPoint, and I think it's really good. It looks at several different drafts of thesis statements and challenges them, and it revises them. You'll notice in this example here, because it's the subordinate, the polygraph has not been proved reliable is the problem. Even under controlled conditions is how experts are challenging it or responding to it by saying, well, why don't we control the environment? Maybe it'll work. And here's the argument in this essay. Its use by employers should, that's an opinion word, be banned, right? So that one sentence has three parts, starting with a subordinate because it has the problem, part one. Part two is the reaction by credible sources. And part three is the opinion. So when one sentence, it does three things simultaneously. Here's another example, right? It should be more than simply an answer. It's got to be it's simply more than a question. So I like this one a lot because it starts with the subordinate, although it's got the problem in the first part, an analysis of its foreign policy that implies that there has already been analysis of John F. Kennedy's foreign policy. So we need to look at it one more time. And suggests is the opinion word, he went down to escalate the war and he lived. So it's got, although subordinate, part one, the problem, part two is implied that credible sources have done analysis of his essay, and we need, the part three is the opinion. We need to do one more analysis of his essay. One more analysis of his foreign policy. Again, sufficient scope. Here's another one, subordinate, although, first part problem. Second part is credible sources responding to it. And third part is what the argument is going to be, and it's arguable. There's another one, instead of although, it's though, which is still a subordinate. First part problem, second part credible sources responding to it, and third part using the opinion word should is the argument. Here's another one. I like this one too because it sort of blends the symbolic and metaphoric into this argument. By inviting visitors to see their own reflections of the wall, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial creates a link between the present and the past. So it's complex and arguable, and the essay is going to argue that if you can see your own reflection and this monument, you'll begin to connect with what it represents, connect with the death, connect with the carnage, connect with the policies, connect with the cultural challenges, connect with all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so it's kind of cool. Let's go back to home page. Announcements I went over. Let's go to modules. I included stuff here for Canvas tutorials if you're having a challenge learning how to navigate Canvas. I have a weekly schedule of all the assignments here. You can sort of see what's coming up. I have for week 1, and let's go to week 3, which is coming up. Here's the outline. And I talked about finding these essays online, so let's see if I can do this. So I've got 1996, Joan Didion on keeping a notebook. So let's see if I can find it out there in the universe. Okay, looks like it's in a Google Doc form. Here it is. Cool. Okay. So I know you can find that. Let me download this and save it, and I'll upload it onto Canvas. My computer's old. It's taking its time. Okay, so let's see if I can. Oh, here it is. It's coming. Okay. Save it. Yay. Okay, so let's go back here to week 3. I'll do another one here. Okay, can find it in Google. Okay, so we have it here. It's just different layout. Okay, that could work. Okay, let's go back here. So you can find this one. Oh, no, here. Let's go back. Okay, so I found it here. Let's get this name, put it in there. Okay, what do I have wrong? Oh. Okay, so there's that one. Annie Dillard's the last one. You gotta be careful of that. Yeah, that's not the best one. Let me see if I have. I may have it saved already. I think I do. Okay, it seems to be in sort of a frozen mode. Oh, I guess I'll stop there. I'll find it. I'll find the essay by Annie Dillard and upload that as well. So that sort of concludes what we've gone over this week so far. So the rhetorical pieces, the outline template, the essays that need to read for week 3. Writer's reference, I don't have that in a PDF I can upload and share. You can rent it online. But those are the two books we're working with now. Is the essays from Old Norton readers, 50 essays from the first 50 years, and also the writer's reference. And then you got essays 3, which is doing critical analysis of one essay from all those. Now it's week 3, so you probably have 9 essays that you've read, and just select one of those essays to do your analysis of. The one that you select is your choice, not mine. Find one that connects with you and go through the proposal and respond to that. I think the proposal is due. I think it's due by Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. That's for essay 3. So again, if there's any questions, reach out to me. Send me an email. I usually respond within a few hours, maybe a day at the latest. That's it. But thank you so much for joining this session, and have a great weekend. Take care.